The Miami spring game happened yesterday. Watched this one late last night. This could be one of the more underrated quarterback rooms in the nation because I think a lot of people, rightly so, are focused on if and when De'Aaron King can get back. They open against Bama in Atlanta. They're adamant, they being Miami, that De'Aaron King's going to be able to get back. They claim he's well ahead on his rehab schedule. I don't doubt him, for the record. But since he didn't play in their spring game yesterday, you got to see Tyler Van Dyke and you got to see Jake Garcia. And they had pretty good showings, to be honest with you. I would probably lean Garcia a little bit there, fresh out of high school. But I really kind of liked what I saw from him yesterday. And again, you start to build that quarterback depth in a room, and all of a sudden maybe you're in a position a year from now where one of those guys is viably contending for the starting position if something crazy doesn't happen this year. And you're looking at it like we look at with Bryce Young at Bama, and we say, man, this guy probably talented enough to start at some places last year. He didn't because they had King, who ended up being healthy, let's hope. And now look at how well positioned he is for this year, 2022. So I thought Garcia, what stood out to me more is he ran tempo. He ran the hurry-up offense for them, I think, a lot better than Van Dyke did. They both had flashes. They both had young mistakes yesterday. But to be clear, because I saw some chatter on Twitter, that's De'Aaron King's job. He is solidly the best quarterback option for them. I had a disagreement with one of my Miami buddies yesterday. Going to have to agree to disagree. If you're trying to tout one of these guys after yesterday, I can assure you their coaching staff internally, I don't think is doing that. Defense, it doesn't have to be iffy. Okay, so the defense for Miami is iffy right now. I thought my biggest takeaway from watching all these spring games yesterday was there were two position groups that stood out to me as needing the most immediate transfer portal help. One of them was Auburn's wide receivers. We're going to talk about them later. And the other one's Miami's linebacking core. Because this can be a good team. They can be good. They're such a hinge factor to Miami. Every year I identify like 3 or 4 hinge teams. And by hinge teams, I mean you look at the roster and on the surface, you could see them going 11-1. You could see them going 8-4. And there are going to be so many close games, one-possession type games where a few mental errors here or there, bounces of the ball, bob plays as we call them, they're going to decide things. Not filling the proper gaps, the difference on a stop and forcing 4th and 2 versus a 38-yard gain to the house. You got to get better, and I think they got to get a little bit bigger, have a little more thump at linebacker. I think they're aware of that, okay? And what you've seen in the transfer game from Miami, and if you hadn't already seen it, go back and watch their spring game, Tyreek Stevenson, instant impact player for them. Charleston Rambo, another transfer from Georgia and Oklahoma respectively, instant impact player for them. Also, I think probably, even though he may not garner as many headlines, one of, if not the most important transfers out of this trio may be DeAndre Johnson. He's a defensive end, and Miami fans understand. If you're a more national type and you don't understand why that's so key, Quincy Roche and Jalen Phillips are 2 defensive ends that are headed off to the next level now. And not only do you have to fill their spot, but they were both transfers in their own right from, I believe, Temple and UCLA. And so here's what that does. Well, number one, you got to fill the spot. But number two, as I've talked about before with Miami, I don't think there are very many programs in America better positioned to capitalize on the transfer portal and NIL, but right now transfer portal, than Miami. So many guys want to go to South Florida. So many guys want to go back home to South Florida every year from rosters all across America. You're just a natural landing spot. Geography is doing you the biggest favor in the world right there. And so now you look at this trio of transfers, and if they follow in the footsteps, let's say, of a guy like Roche and a guy like Phillips, and it starts to become this brand in and of the bigger brand of the U there, that this is the place to come. This is kind of a transfer rebirth zone of sorts, even if you're not from South Florida, but especially if you are from here and we let you get away, come back home, repair your image, or get the chance maybe here that you couldn't get on another roster. And we are a pipeline, not just for high school recruits, but for transfers to the NFL. It's something I can guarantee you they're looking to sell behind the scenes. It's early. There aren't enough trends that have formed yet, but that's something to watch. Just watch Jordan this year, and if he starts to follow in those footsteps, if Rambo, if Tyreek Stevenson, he's in a bona fide contract year this year, if they start to follow in those footsteps, just something to keep an eye on with Miami. This is going to be a big year for Rhett Lashley coming up. There was a lot of time dedicated on that broadcast yesterday, and there's been a lot of time this spring, to be honest with you, dedicated to emphasizing, hey, this is Rhett Lashley's offense. Okay, no one ever suggested it wasn't, but he's a guy in control now, and he's also a guy they've been able to feel out down there. You know, they did not immediately land on him when Diaz took over, but he's the guy now, and I think a lot of people in the industry, in the coaching industry, maybe in the recruiting world, they want to see Rhett Lashlee have that one breakout year. They want to see Miami make not just kind of maybe a jump, but a huge splash in terms of offensive production. There have been times, like there have been moments, but they want to see it and be able to look at 2021 and say, no, that's the year we took off. Like that's the year everything changed. And that wasn't something you were going to see yesterday, obviously, but it's something that you need to see this year. If you got to go to the portal for wide receiver, whatever, that's something they should see. They got to find a feature back. Like they got to find a guy they've talked about it all spring. They got to find a guy that they can ride. I've got my preference there. Cameron Harris is there, but they got to find a guy they can ride. Knighton, I think, played a lot yesterday. But Rhett Lashlee's got to have a big year because as his offense goes this year, so too will go Miami. It can be a really good team. Like I said, they are the quintessential hinge team for me in college football this year. They got a critical summer coming up. They got a critical fall camp coming up. If you get quarterback figured out, and by that I mean if King is indeed healthy and ready for fall camp, and they fortify especially the middle of that defense, and cut down on mistakes. Drop balls still an issue for them yesterday. They just can't have that stuff happen. If they get that stuff taken care of, at least to a high enough degree, that's going to be the difference. It's going to be the difference between 10-2, bordering on better, versus 8-4 and asking what might have been and what could have been at the end of the year.